music you see. So stick with me and be all that you can be, and join me on a journey through music theory. Hi, I'm Mr. B, and today we're going to learn about percussion instruments. So percussion instruments are any instruments that are hit, shaken, or scraped. For example, hit, shaken, or scraped. So before we get into all of the percussion instruments, and there are quite a lot of them, there's two things I want to tell you beforehand. First, you might see a lot of sticks in this video. So they're not actually called sticks. They're called mallets. So anything that you use to hit an instrument with can be a mallet. Now this is a typical percussion mallet, maybe used for xylophones or something like that. Here is the mallet that I used on the scraping instrument that we'll get to. And here is a drumstick that you might be familiar with. So anything like this that you can use to strike an instrument is a mallet. That's important to know. Also, in percussion instruments, or in the percussion family, there are kind of two subsections. There's one for pitched instruments and one for non-pitched or unpitched instruments. So there's pitched percussion and non-pitched percussion or unpitched percussion. And what does this mean? Can you think about that for a minute? Think about what a pitch is. When we sing a song, we sing the melody of the song, and those are the pitches for the song. So for example, I have one of my percussion instruments here. This is a glockenspiel, which is basically a small metallophone. We call it a metallophone because the bars are made of metal, okay? But metallophones and glockenspiels and xylophones and a lot of other percussion instruments are pitched percussion instruments. And that means that you can play a melody on it. You can actually play the notes to a song. For example, I'll play a song on my glockenspiel. So this is a pitched percussion instrument because you hit it, which makes it a percussion instrument, but it has pitches, it has actual notes in it, and that's what makes it a pitched percussion instrument. Now, an example of a non-pitched percussion instrument would be the shaker that I was using, or this simple hand drum. Let me use the hand drum. So if I'm using a hand drum, I have to hit it to make a sound, but it doesn't play different pitches. So this is an unpitched percussion instrument or a non-pitched percussion instrument. So you just heard me play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the pitched percussion, and now I'm going to play the same rhythm on this drum, but it's going to sound different because this drum is unpitched. It does not have notes. So that's an example of an unpitched percussion instrument. It doesn't have different notes for me to play, so I can't play the melody on that, but I can play the rhythm on that. So let's get started with all of the different percussion instruments. Hi again, I'm Mr. B, and today we're learning about percussion instruments. So in this video, we'll go over the orchestral percussion instruments and the drum kit. And so these instruments are focused in America. And then in my second video about percussion, we'll go explore the percussion instruments around the world. So these next instruments you'll likely see in an orchestra. The first one is a timpani. and it's a pitched percussion instrument. You'll notice that the timpani is a big drum. It's also called a kettle drum. And you can actually tune a timpani. So you can choose what note the timpani will actually play. And you can use this foot pedal here to change the tone. So what it does is it tightens the drum head at the top so that you can change the note that it plays. So it is a pitched percussion instrument. So did you hear those drums at the very beginning? Those are the timpani drums. Another pitched percussion instrument is the xylophone. And you might be familiar with xylophones. They come in some different shapes and sizes. A classroom xylophone won't be as complicated as the ones you're seeing here, but they do look similar. Now, xylophones have wooden bars on it, okay? So the bars are made of wood, unlike a glockenspiel or a metallophone. So let's listen to the xylophone, which is also a pitched percussion instrument. So you also notice the xylophone might sound like very short sounds, almost like you're playing on some bones. Here's the next instrument. It's called a glockenspiel. It's pretty similar to the one that I played for you earlier in this video. The bars are made of metal instead of wood. So the bars are metallic, and it has more of a bell-like sound. So this next instrument is very interesting. It's called a celesta or a celeste, and it looks like a piano, doesn't it? Now there's a great debate among musicians whether a piano is a stringed instrument or a percussion instrument because it has strings inside it, but it also has hammers to play those strings inside it. So a lot of people do consider a piano to be a percussion instrument. Now a celeste or a celesta has little bells inside, so it does sound more chimey and bell-like, okay? So you will hear the celeste. These are called chimes, and chimes are also in the percussion section, and they're just large bars hanging down, and they do also sound like bells. And the last pitched percussion instrument is called a vibraphone. Now this is very similar to a xylophone, but you'll notice that it has some extended bars down here, and a vibraphone actually has sort of like a vibrating sound, almost like an echoey sound. So all of these instruments that you've heard are pitched percussion instruments. And now I'll move on to the unpitched percussion. Hey, what did the drummer call his two twin daughters? And a 1 and a 2. Get it? And a 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's talk about some unpitched percussion instruments. These are instruments that don't play necessarily notes in a scale, but they can play rhythms, and they're very good at adding some sound effects to music and rhythms and beats to music. So you might recognize this as a drum set. It's also known as a drum kit. Now, a drum kit has lots of different drums attached to it. So I wanted to show you some of these drums. The big one in the middle is called the bass drum, and you usually play that with a foot pedal. So someone would sit down on a stool, and to play the bass drum, you would push your foot down on the foot pedal, which would take the mallet to hit the drum on its own. Because a drummer sitting down at a drum set needs all of their limbs. So both hands and both feet are doing lots of different things at the same time. So it helps to have those foot pedals. Another thing that has a foot pedal is called a hi-hat cymbal. And the hi-hat cymbal has a foot pedal, and it crashes two cymbals down together and holds them down. You'll also see cymbals, and you'll see tom drums. This is a tom drum. They usually have clear heads like this. And you'll also see a snare drum in a drum kit. So here is a completed drum set for you to listen to. Okay, let me put out some of these drums. So these are cymbals here and here. This is the hi-hat cymbal here, which is closed right now. These clear drums are tom drums, and the one in the middle is the snare drum. Okay, so there's your drum set or drum kit. If you do sit down to play a drum kit, it's best to use some ear protection because it can get very loud, and you might want to use some earplugs, or if you have one of those big sets of headphones, you can put those over your ears to protect your ears. So this is the snare drum. Okay, let me show you this. You'll notice the snare drum has that rattly sort of sound, but you can also adjust it on the bottom to take that rattle off, and then it just becomes a tom drum. Here's a big bass drum that you would see in some orchestras. Here's a tambourine. You may have seen this in a music classroom. It's basically a hand drum, and it's got little cymbals on the side. And here's the triangle. You saw me playing this earlier in the video. Usually a triangle has a metal mallet to it, but I couldn't find one, so I used a mallet that you would use on a xylophone instead. Here's an example of a crash cymbal. Now you would see those in orchestras, or if they're on a drum kit, they would be called a suspended cymbal because they would be on a pole so that you wouldn't have to hold it. Some other smaller percussion instruments are wood block, the tam-tam is also called a gong. We'll hear some more about gongs in the second video, but I wanted to show you this too because in some orchestras they do have a gong. These are called castanets. They make a little clicking sound, and the last instrument here is called a slap stick. Let me show you that video. So a slap stick just makes that slapping sort of sound with two pieces of wood. Thanks for Thanks for watching my video about percussion instruments, part 1. Bye. I'm Mr. B. If you like what you see, please subscribe to me.